Today on NewsWatch, immigration crisis. We'll break down how the U.S. plans to help with the hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing the Middle East. Plus,
I just want to give God the glory. His people have rallied, and you are a strong people.
From jail and still refuses to issue gay marriage licenses. Hear what's next for Kentucky clerk Kim Davis. And
sometimes without suffering, there's no challenge, and without that challenge, there's no victory.
See how the church in Cuba is growing despite decades of political restrictions. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Caitlin Burke. Kim Davis woke up a free woman this morning. The Kentucky County Clerk spent 5 days behind bars after a judge threw her in jail for not issuing gay marriage licenses. Davis says she couldn't betray her Christian faith since those licenses would be granted under her authority. CBN's David Brody traveled to Grayson, Kentucky for what turned into a big evangelical party.
The rolling hills of northeastern Kentucky, home to beautiful scenery, biblical values, and on especially hot September days, the churches here come prayer conditioned. Here in Grayson, evangelicals turned up the heat. They came here to rally for Kim Davis's freedom and enjoyed something even better.
Thank you all so much.
The same judge that put her behind bars also let her go, saying that since her deputy clerks began issuing licenses to gay couples, there would be no reason to keep her in jail. If she tries to interfere, however, when she returns to work, there could be more legal trouble. For now, though,
I just want to give God the glory. His people have rallied, and you are a strong people. We serve a living God who knows exactly where each and every one of us is at. Just keep on pressing. Don't let down, because he is here.
That was music to the ears of hundreds who came from all over the country to support Davis's stand for religious liberty and the biblical definition of marriage.
I did not want my children to miss this moment in history as this courageous woman of God is being persecuted for her faith.
We need to stand up. We need to stand up as believers, stand together. And, our country was founded on Christian principles.
GOP presidential candidate Mike Huckabee helped organize the rally and met with Davis after her release. So did GOP presidential candidate Ted Cruz. But politics took a back seat, with Huckabee telling CBN News this was a day to believe in a God of miracles.
This is a God of miracles performed today. Is this what happened?
I think it is a God of miracles that we saw act in getting Kim Davis out of jail. But her being in jail brought attention to something that many of us have warned about, the criminalization of Christianity.
This fight has been brewing since the Supreme Court ruled in favor of gay marriage 2 months ago. Chief Justice John Roberts warned that events like this would happen, and that finding a right to marriage equality in the Constitution would raise future problems when people of faith exercise religion in ways that may be seen to conflict with the Supreme Court decision. Christians here believe the time is now to take a stand.
We have to be ready. The Apostle Paul says we got to be steadfast and unmovable. Always be ready to stand up and stand out for Jesus Christ.
As for Kim Davis's future, her lawyers want an accommodation so that her name or authority doesn't have to be part of the marriage license. They believe the Kentucky governor can solve the problem with an executive order that allows the authority of the license to come from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Whatever happens, despite her release, she won't back down.
And she will not violate her conscience. She will return to work at the Rowan County Clerk's office later this week, and she will not abandon her post at that position that she's been democratically elected to serve.
The small town of Grayson, Kentucky now has a permanent home on the religious liberty map, and that map will be littered with fights all over the country. Grayson, Kentucky, just the beginning. David Brody, CBN News in Grayson, Kentucky.
It appears Chaplain Wes Motor is not going to be forced out of the Navy for his religious views. The Independent Military Times reports that Motor's commander had been pushing for his dismissal, citing comments allegedly made in counseling sessions critical of premarital sex and homosexual relations. Top Navy officials investigated but found limited evidence of misconduct. The Navy Personnel Command says the evidence doesn't meet the standard of gross negligence or complete disregard for duty, which is needed to boot out an officer. You've seen the huge refugee crisis in Europe. Now our president wants to bring some of those refugees here. Dale Hurd has that story.
The UN says close to 1 million migrants from Africa and the Middle East are expected to enter Europe by the end of the year, and the White House says some of them will be coming to the U.S. America's worldwide annual refugee quota is 70,000. Now there is pressure from Europe to raise that number considerably.
No decisions have been made about future resettlement going, past this fiscal year, but I do think it's reasonable to expect and to assume that there will be additional resettlements going into next year. What that's going to look like, how many, I don't have a number for you.
Today, European Commission head Jean-Claude Juncker announced a plan to distribute 160,000 migrants and refugees across 22 nations in Europe. And he stressed that it was wrong to be concerned that the refugees were mostly Muslim.
There is no religion, there is no belief, there is no philosophy when it comes to refugees and to those who are fleeing.
This Syrian refugee about to leave Turkey says the danger in Syria is also big because there is war. In Turkey, we cannot find a job. A quick death is better than a slow one because if we die at sea, we die quickly. But what is very disturbing to some observers is that according to the UN, 72% of the migrants entering Europe are men. Refugees typically move as families. Terrorism experts have warned that ISIS has a plan to send fighters to Europe. About the White House plan to bring some of the migrants to the U.S., the Republican chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee said the White House has a responsibility to protect the American people and our country. Terrorists have exploited the refugee process to sneak into our country in the past. And officials have warned my committee that we lack the on-the-ground intelligence in Syria needed to confidently vet individuals for resettlement. This surge is beginning to remind some of a famous French novel from the 1970s, The Camp of the Saints, both praised as brilliant by critics and panned by some as xenophobic. It predicted that Europe would fall when Africans and Asians suddenly flooded the continent, and Europeans no longer had the will to exist, to maintain their own identities. This refugee surge has not reached that level, but it is a crisis that many critics warn will certainly change Europe and could change America as well. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Senate Democrats now have enough votes to filibuster attempts to block President Obama's nuclear deal with Iran. 4 new Democratic senators came out in favor of the deal Tuesday. Republicans say it's a bad deal that gives Iran too much freedom to pursue its nuclear agenda. Senate Republicans were hoping to pass a measure opposing the deal, but it now looks unlikely that the Senate will get to vote at all. Former Vice President Dick Cheney says the Iran deal will only allow Iran to grow more dangerous.
Approval of this agreement will not prevent a nuclear Iran, along with a pathway to a nuclear arsenal. They have placed on the table for congressional review a deal that provides weapons and funds to a regime that has pledged to destroy Israel and maintains death to America as a central pillar of its policies.
He says the deal will allow Iran to obtain the funding to support terrorism and pursue their goal of destroying Israel. Naghmeh Abedini, the wife of imprisoned pastor Saeed Abedini, is calling for fasting and prayer on behalf of her husband and the persecuted church. Pastor Saeed is serving an 8-year sentence in Iran for his Christian faith. On a Facebook post, Naghmeh says she'll be fasting from pleasant foods, as in the Daniel fast. And the scripture God gave her for this fast is Hebrews 12:12, adding, "The Lord is showing me that as we pray for Saeed and the persecuted church and remember the witnesses, revival can be brought into our own life and in our country." You can find out more about Pastor Saeed's case at cbnnews.com. Hillary Clinton is issuing her first apology for using a private email server to conduct government business.
I'm sorry about that. I take responsibility. I did not send or receive any information that was marked classified at the time.
But now that government officials have had a chance to look at the emails Clinton was sending, at least 125 of them have been ruled as classified. The FBI is examining Clinton's private email server, but Clinton says there is no criminal investigation. Her apology came in an exclusive interview with ABC News, and it comes as a new Monmouth University poll shows Clinton is down 10 points since last month. The number appears to reflect the public's concern over the email scandal. Coming up, explosive church growth in an unlikely place. See why Christianity has thrived in communist Cuba after this. Cuba has been dominated by communism for more than 50 years, but many people have wondered how strong was the church in Cuba during those decades. Now we're learning that it did amazingly well despite difficult times, and the hardship it suffered has paved the way for an explosion of church growth today. Heather Sells brings us that story from Havana.
On a typical Sunday morning in Cuba, you'll find church crowds overflowing around the island. Many are house churches meeting in remodeled living rooms. Others look like your typical church with one big difference: political restrictions.
Space is an issue for so many Cuban churches. For this particular church, the government will not sell it more land, and it's growing, so it's been forced to build up.
On the upper levels, you'll find Sunday school rooms plus 4 spillover areas to watch the Sunday service.
When you have 80 to 100 people in an apartment, it's hard, very hard, and neighbors get upset.
Pastor Miguel leads a house church now meeting in his yard because it no longer fits inside. It's a common theme in Cuban churches fueled by incredible growth and government restrictions. In the past 20 years, more than 16,000 evangelical churches have opened their doors.
One of the things that has made us grow in faith has been the limitations and the difficulties.
Pastor Nestor and his wife Rosa live in one room above their tiny church. On Sunday mornings and during weeknight services, only a few will have a real seat.
People here don't care how comfortable they are. They could be exhausted from working all day and they will sit on a bag of rocks, a stitched-up chair, or stand the whole service, and they're okay with that.
Cuban church leaders say events led by the fall of the Soviet Union sparked the current church planting explosion.
When the Russian government collapsed, Cuba went through a lot, and people started looking to churches for hope.
At the same time, the government ended its atheistic philosophy and declared itself a secular state, leading an entire generation to question what it believed. A government official at the time suggested that churches, unable to obtain building permits, meet in homes. That offhand comment sparked a movement similar to early church growth in the Book of Acts. Pastor Francisco is one of thousands of Cuban house church pastors who followed the gospel with tremendous passion.
We have evangelized everyone who lives in this area, a New Testament Bible to each home. We can't stop, we won't stop, because even if they won't accept the Lord the first, second, third, or fourth time, even so, we can't stop until they come to the Lord.
The growth of the church here is even more miraculous given the country's poverty. Average monthly government salary is $20, and professionals typically make less than $50. Still, Cuban churches are known for their generosity and willingness to sacrifice for the sake of the gospel.
What we have, we want to share with others. What we have, not what we have left over.
Another obstacle Cuban churches face is spiritual warfare in the form of Santeria. It's a blend of West African religions known for its ritual ceremonies.
This is a wooded area in Havana where those practicing Santeria like to come. They will perform ritual cleansings in the river here and offer sacrifices on this rock.
Pastor Nestor faces resistance right in the neighborhood. During one Sunday worship, a Santeria group stood outside the church, beating their drums.
Levantamos la iglesia todo en oración. It was kind of like a spiritual face-off. The church just started praying, and then we prayed for rain, and all of a sudden there was thunder, so they had to leave.
Church leaders say they're enjoying a new season of relaxed restrictions. It's easier to evangelize outside the church, and they receive more permits to hold special events. Still, most churches cannot expand or buy land. They cannot produce Christian radio or television shows. And they must work around a dysfunctional economy. Remodeling plans at Pastor Nestor's church are on hold indefinitely until they can obtain much-needed cement.
Sometimes without suffering, there's no challenge, and without that challenge, there's no victory.
Reporting in Havana, Cuba, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Up next, 90 Minutes in Heaven. Go behind the scenes of the new film and find out why you'll want to get to the theater this coming weekend. In today's edition of Family Entertainment News, movie-going audiences have proven that the market for faith-based films is strong. Now this weekend, another major movie is opening, based on a best-selling book about a man who died and came back from heaven. Angela Zatopek brings us that story.
Curiosity about the afterlife seems stronger than ever in books, TV, and the movies. Hollywood took notice after the film Heaven is for Real brought in more than $100 million at the box office. Now it hopes theatergoers want more. Selling over 7 million copies and translated into 46 different languages, Don Piper wrote on his experience after death in his book, 90 Minutes in Heaven. 26 years later, this modern-day Lazarus story comes to life on the big screen.
Every day of my life, I ask the same question. Oh Lord, why'd you let me see heaven? And take it away.
Actor Hayden Christensen from Star Wars plays Don.
I hope that people will leave this film feeling uplifted and feeling better about life, as I did, when I put down the script the first time.
Kate Bosworth, seen in Superman Returns, plays his wife, Eva, who Piper calls the real hero because she kept the family together.
This is one of those stories that has the possibility of changing people's lives.
E! News' Jason Kennedy also appears in the film as Don's best friend.
People need to know that there is more to life than just what's happening right here.
The film shows how a head-on collision changed Piper's life forever. His body mangled, emergency workers declared him dead shortly after getting to the scene. As Christian pastor Dick Honorecker passed the wreckage, he felt led by God to stop and pray for Don. As Honorecker called out to God inside the car, Piper suddenly started singing and came back to life. A total of 90 minutes had elapsed. During that time, he says he visited heaven.
I saw colors I've never seen before. I heard the music, thousands of songs at the same time with that chaos. Only one song distinguished itself among all of those, and that was Holy, Holy, Holy.
The film releases September 11th, showing the power of prayer and the miracle that has touched hearts around the world.
Through his plan, I discovered my purpose is to tell you. God still answers prayers. God still performs miracles.
As we saw from War Room, movies like this have been doing really well in the box offices. Be sure to go and check this one out. We'll be right back. Many cancer patients experience extreme exhaustion from their treatment. This fatigue is especially difficult for women responsible for running a home. But as Lori Johnson tells us, many of them are getting help with the housework for free.
Despite her ovarian cancer, Stacy Schwinghammer resolved to be strong for her children.
Whatever energy I had, I needed to use to keep their lives normal and consistent with what routines that they were normally used to. And then, of course, when they went to school, back in bed I went and just didn't move until it was time when they got home.
Cancer treatment, especially chemotherapy, drains your energy, sometimes for weeks on end. Many women don't even have the strength to clean their homes. Now they're getting help. Free maid service once a month for 4 months. An idea that grew from one Dallas cleaning business.
So I did it as a company policy for many, many years. And then fast forward years later, I turned that company policy into a nonprofit. And now we have maid services all over the country that are donating free house cleaning to women with cancer.
Over 1,000 cleaning services from all 50 states are on board.
You know, a lot of times patients don't want to have family clean their home. They don't want to have their best friend come clean their home. And having a stranger sometimes do that is a little bit easier.
So far, 15,000 women have received this gift.
My whole world changed just knowing I could count on them.
Cancer patients or cleaning services that would like to get involved can find a link to the Cleaning for a Reason website at cbnnews.com. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Finally today, flood victims in Guatemala received much-needed assistance from CBN. Over 1,700 people were displaced after heavy rains contributed to the overflowing of 2 rivers in the area. CBN partnered with the local government and churches to provide food, water, clothing, medical care, and prayer. Children were even able to enjoy watching Superbook episodes. You can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international. That's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find out more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care about most at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.